Okay, chat. So something that I've noticed when I'm talking with people on like Twitter, especially, or even Reddit, I think that a lot of times people don't understand how to go about balancing combo decks. Because in Legend of Runeterra, a lot of these decks aren't necessarily combo decks, but have combo finishes, right? So I'm thinking like Thralls, I'm thinking like even FTR, Lee Sin. I know that FTR is a control deck, but when I'm talking about combo decks, what I mean is that they have a combo finish, right? So that's going to be like actually casting FTR, or even just playing like She Who Wanders, Lee Sin kicking in the face, Thralls summoning a ton of different Thralls, right? And just beating you down. When we're talking about combo decks, I think that there's a few things that we need to talk about, right? I think that the most important thing is consistency of the combo. How consistently are they able to hit it? It's like it's like Lee Sin. Like if you never draw Lee Sin, are you losing the game? Are you able to win without it? Consistency, how lethal the combo is. For instance, like FTR, the card itself, Feel the Rush, is not always lethal against a lot of decks. A lot of decks can deal with 2 10-10s, right? Whereas something like She Who Wanders oftentimes is lethal. 4 Thralls is oftentimes lethal. So the consistency, how lethal it is, and then the deck's survivability, how often they're able to make it to the point where they can actually do their combos. So consistency, how strong slash lethal is the combo, and their survivability. All right. Only one thing is important, is how cracked the combo looks. Also that's pretty important. So when we're talking about decks like Thralls, because Thralls I think is sort of a hot button issue right now, right? A lot of people are talking about the power level of Thralls and how to go about balancing it. I think that we need to look at it through these lenses. So Thralls before this patch, if you don't remember, had a very strong and lethal combo against most decks, right? You're summoning 3 to 4 to 5 Thralls. You have a flip Lysandra. This is a very strong combo. It's very difficult for a lot of decks to deal with. Also, how interactable the combo is, guys. Sorry. How interactable the combo is. So this would be like FTR can be denied. Lee Sin can be killed. Thralls, can they be killed? Can you remove their landmarks? Stuff like that, right? These are the 4 things. So before patch, when we're talking about Thralls, it was a very strong combo. Nothing has changed there. How interactable is it? Landmark removal is kind of the only way to really like stop it. You could also like use like palms and stuff to try and deal with the Thralls after they come out, but it's pretty difficult. Their combos usually going off. And a lot of times landmark removal, even if you have landmark removal, isn't enough to beat Thralls players if they're actually good Thralls players. Right? So this hasn't changed. This hasn't changed either. So what has changed with Thralls? What moved Thralls from being like this really low tier 2 deck to potentially the best deck of the format? And what happened is we improved its consistency with the invention of Harbinger of the Thralls, or Harbinger of, is that what it is? Harbinger of Thralls? And the survivability. Now, this deck has always had pretty solid survivability because of Blighter Ravine. Blighter Ravine's just an insane card that enables a lot of these decks to survive forever, especially when you're a combo deck and your combo's going off on turn 5 or turn 6, making your opponent take a turn off, heal and clear a board is just so disgustingly powerful, right? This card and the new Sands of Time is actually doing another one.
Why are there so
Why are there
many?
so many? Yo, Spider Ranch with the Prime, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It's actually doing so much to aid in the survivability and even the consistency of this deck, right? So I think that that's what really changed this patch and what sort of moved Thralls into being such an insane deck is that we've sort of taken what was their weakness and improved it in every way. And I think that when we're looking at combo finishes like this, it's important to evaluate these and make sure that there's some amount of counter to the deck, right? I think that it needs to be weak in one of these ways. So for instance, Lee Sin was an extremely strong deck because how consistent was its win condition? It wasn't ultra consistent, but it ran 6 copies of Eye of the Dragon, which let it survive. You could just draw cards forever. You're drawing like 15 cards per game with how much cycle you have in Lee Sin. So the consistency was honestly pretty high. Survivability was through the roof because 6 copies of Eye of the Dragon is just impossible for a lot of decks to actually punch through. How interactable is the combo? Not. It's just not, right? Lee Sin has barrier. Lee Sin has deny. Lee Sin has a million ways to just continually beat your ass with the combo. And how lethal is it? They fucking kill you, right? And this is why Lee Sin was an issue, and this is why Lee Sin had to lose its 6 copies of Eye of the Dragon. Similarly, I think when we're looking at something like Thralls, if we talk about the consistency, it doesn't brick anymore. It just doesn't brick anymore. How survival is it? It doesn't die. The only things that like dies to are like big rally decks. Scouts, if we look at the stats, guys, Scouts doesn't even beat Thralls anymore, which is insane, which is actually insane. Scout should be a deck that's beating Thralls, and it doesn't, right? The survivability on this deck is so incredibly high. How interactable is the combo? It's not. Landmark removal doesn't matter against good Thralls players, right? Especially since they got extra copies of Thralls that you can just throw out. The way to beat landmark removal, you have multiple Thralls, you tick them down differently, you don't commit your promising future unless you have deny up. It's really fucking easy. It's really easy. Only bad Thralls players or bad hands of Thralls lose to landmark removal. And how strong and lethal is the combo? It's pretty fucking strong. It's pretty fucking strong. And I feel like if we're going to go about balancing this deck and balancing any sort of combo finish deck in the future, we need to make sure there's some kind of weakness here. So for instance, if we wanted to make the combo slightly less lethal, we could look at making the Thralls 7/7s or 6/6s, right? Like these are options that make it so that when the combo goes off, you're allowed to keep your consistency, you're allowed to keep your ability to survive through everything, and you're allowed to keep how uninteractive your combo is if it's slightly less lethal. Or we could make it so that the combo is more interactive, right? You know, maybe the landmark has a higher cooldown or a higher countdown. So if you blow one up that's closer to ticking all the way down, it's a lot more painful for them, right? You know, maybe it goes up to like 10. I don't know if 10 would be enough, but it's like it's an option. Or you just print like a shit ton of landmark removal, but I don't like that. I think it's a bad change. I think that survivability is another option, right? This would be hitting Ravine. This would be hitting flipped Lissandra, no longer, I don't know, like not having 4 health and tough, so she's unkillable, or no longer having tough Nexus. Tough Nexus is fucking insane. Or making sure her ice shards aren't free every turn. Why are her ice shards free every goddamn turn? Maybe Lissandra shouldn't have 3 fucking health and tough at level 1 so she gets to double block. Maybe the new 6 mana card shouldn't give -2 to everything. Maybe it's -1 to everything. Or maybe it's the thing that generates should be fleeting. There needs to be something in here that gets changed. Or the consistency, you know, I don't know. I don't think you can hit the consistency at this point. I don't think you can hit the consistency at this point. There's too many good Thralls generators, and there's too many good ways to tick down the landmarks. I don't think it's possible to hit the consistency on this deck now. I just don't think it is, without like just removing cards from the game. So yeah, I think that there's something in here. I think that this is like the lens that we should be evaluating decks on if they're healthy. Is there a weakness here? And if so, how we go about balancing it, right? And that's something that I think a lot of people are missing. So like, for instance, if we check my Twitter, guys, which by the way, if you aren't following me on Twitter, follow me on Twitter. Come on. If we check my Twitter, I had a tweet earlier where I was bitching about Ravine. That's something I do quite a bit, is I bitch about Ravine. I think Ravine is just an insane card. But I've bitched about Ravine enough that I came around and I'm like, okay, to continue my Freljord hate, why is Lissandra the most overloaded champ in the game? She's a 2/3 tough, so she always double blocks and is unkillable when flipped. Summons a Thrall, gives Watcher, gives free ice shards, and also tough Nexus because the fucking Ravine deck needed more protection. Now, a lot of people, when they saw this, understandably were like, bro, why are you trying to nerf Lissandra? Lissandra's not the problem. Right? That's what they're saying, right? I really like Lissandra. I think Lissandra's interesting design, and I don't want you to nerf it. And I think that that's totally valid. I think it's totally valid. The issue is that when I usually bitch about this deck, and the things that I think are actually the issue, and I do think that there are actual issues. I think the actual issues are just how consistent the deck is. The existence of Ravine. I think that these are like the real issues here, right? But I think it's incredibly unlikely that they're going to end up nerfing Ravine. I don't think that they can nerf the consistency in this deck. They've already talked about how they feel like Ravine is sort of a linchpin for most Freljord decks, right? So if we're talking about not fixing the survivability of this deck, then I think that the other way to hit it would be to hit something like Lissandra. I don't really want to hit Lissandra. I don't think Lissandra is the issue, but we have to hit something here to try and make this deck more healthy, because right now it's just a major issue. Anyway, I just wanted to talk about that. I feel like that is something that I want to explain, because a lot of people don't necessarily understand where I'm coming from. You know, if I come out and I bitch about Lissandra and they're like, why are you coming after Lissandra? Yeah, I just want to explain where I'm coming from, explain my thought process. Nexus doesn't need tough. Dude, tough Nexus is so insanely strong. Like, it actually saves so much health every single turn. And I think that Lissandra wouldn't be as big of an issue if she didn't have 3 or 4 health and tough, because at 3 or 4 health, your card's already really hard to deal with. There's no one card in the game that's actually dealing with like 3 or 4 health, or like 4 health, right? Especially with tough. Once you have tough, you have to deal 4 damage or 5 damage in one go. That's not happening very often, right? So it's usually 2 or 3 cards that you're throwing at Lissandra to try and kill her, and then they just play second one. It's just so it's just so punishing if you try and kill Lissandra because she's tough. You love tough Nexus, but it needs to cost more. I can see that. If you're gonna nerf the one good Freljord deck, you're gonna buff other stuff in Freljord. So as far as like nerfing Freljord, I think that what I would like to see out of Freljord is strong mid-range Freljord decks. This is like Ash LeBlanc, or like Overwhelm decks, or like Sejuani decks. Like, I think that this mid-range Freljord is a lot more fun to play against than Ravine decks. I feel like Ravine is such an inherently toxic card that pushes all of these uninteractive strategies that I don't enjoy playing against. Right? So when I talk about nerfing Freljord, I want to nerf Ravine, I want to nerf stuff like that, but I want to buff mid-range Freljord. That's like my hope. That's what I think would improve the region and make it more fun to play against. Nerf Lissandra's level up? Maybe. Like, I think lowering her stats would go a long way, or just removing tough from the card. I'd love to remove tough from the card, honestly. They're always coming out burst speed's a problem. True. That's part of like how incredibly uninteractive the combo it is, and like it leads to how strong and like how hard it is to survive. Space 5 Thralls in a row and ladder. It's insane. Just nerf the countdown. I think nerfing the 8 countdown is something they probably don't want to do, but it's an option. How about only summon Frozen Thrall first time she's summoned? I don't think that matters. I don't think that the extra Thralls really matter with her. Always seen Freljord's a region of beefy Overwhelm regen boys for mid-range. Till this, yeah. Udyr decks? Yeah, I'm down for Udyr decks to be good. They who endure to 6 mana? I mean, that's more of like, I feel like Endure's more of an SI deck, but I feel ya. I feel ya. Hit the countdown spell, make it slow speed. Which one? Time in a bottle? I guess you could. Make Thralls have weaker stats. See, that's an option, right? That's one of the like the 4 points that I feel like we should be balancing these cards by. So yeah, like making it so that the combo when it goes off isn't as lethal. I'm down for that. For instance, guys, if we're gonna look at this, let's look at TLC. Do you guys remember TLC? TLC was an incredibly strong control deck. It was Trundle Lissandra control, or Trundle Lissandra combo, or Trundle Lissandra cringe, whatever you want to call it. The idea was that you would use Trundle Pillars plus Fading Memories plus Matron to be able to cheat out the Watcher, right? And the thing is that this deck was so consistent that it was consistently watching you on turn 9 or 10 almost every game. And this didn't say leave 3 non-enemy champions. This said obliterate the enemy deck. Gone from the game. You lose on your next turn, right? So the issue with this deck, when we look at it, was that A, it was incredibly consistent. B, it has Freljord SI in it, so it's so survivable. Whale, Vial, Ravine, these are insane cards that just made it so difficult to actually kill this deck, right? How interactable is the combo? Impossible to interact with. Impossible to interact with. We didn't have aloof travelers in this game, so we couldn't hit it out of the hand. Even if you have like stuns stacked up, the thing is that they would matron out one Watcher, you stun it, they play second Watcher, maybe you have another stun, maybe you have a comet, maybe you have a way to deal with that. Oh, oops, they have Fading Memories, they play another one. They were constantly playing out like 3 Watchers in one turn. And how strong and lethal was it? It killed you instantly. So what Riot did is they didn't hit the interactability. They hit how lethal it was by making Watcher no longer instantly win the game, and how consistent it was, because they made it so instead of 4 8 or plus cost units to make it cost 0, it costs 5 units. So they slowed it down quite a bit. They made it less consistent, and they made it less lethal. And that's a good way of approaching balancing a deck, right? I love that they approached it that way. Could deny their board space. Keck W. Also make control literally unplayable. Yeah, TLC was so toxic. TLC was one of the most toxic decks in the entire game, like ever. Like literally ever. Slow back then, but they throw every SI healing spell at you that killed your board. Made it last till 9. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It wasn't really slow as far as like the game was then. 5 units instead of 4 units is such a big nerf. True, I think it's great. What changes would I make to make Freljord mid-range more viable? I would love... Okay, I think Omen Hawk to 2-1 is a good change. Bird exists in the game right now. The Bard 1-drop is a fucking 2-1 that's basically just better Omen Hawk. I think Omen Hawk to a 2-1. Buff Scargrounds? I don't know if I would buff Scargrounds. I would love to buff Ash LeBlanc. I think Ash LeBlanc would be so much better if Assessor had 5 attack. I know it's a Noxus card, but I think it helps out this mid-range Freljord Noxus deck, right? Yeah, stuff like that. Issues with the new 6-mana card. Sands of Time in Thralls. Yeah, it adds so much consistency, right? Better draw than Ravros and Sentry. Yeah, more draw in Freljord. I wouldn't hate that either. Buff Catastrophe, buff Udyr. I think that there's a lot of options, right? Omen Hawk 2-1 is cracked? Yeah, I mean, mid-range Freljord hasn't existed forever. Just give him a fucking broken card. Give mid-range Freljord a broken card so there's a reason to play Freljord other than Ravine. Because right now, Ravine is the only reason to play Freljord, and I fucking hate Ravine. I fucking hate Ravine. I hate it. 2-mana 5-1s to be able to block? Hell no. Omen Hawk could maybe be able to 1-2? 2-1 would be kind of nuts? Yeah, I'm down for it. I'm down for it. More interaction would be good for mid-range Freljord too. Yeah, potentially so. Like, draw interaction. There's a lot of ways to go about doing it. Give Braum 1 attack. Fuck that. Nerf all the decks that beat me? I'm a Demacia player, Phoenix, right? Like, if I want to, I can just start playing Sivir. I've always been a Sivir player. I've always been a Scouts player. Like, if I want, I could absolutely play decks that beat Control Freljord. Scouts doesn't lose the fucking Ravine. Like, homie. 5-2 Glory Seeker? I don't know about that. Remove Blackline units with Freljord is 3 Sisters in Tomb? True. That is true. Yeah. Some kind of a strike spell might be good. Some kind of a kill spell. I don't know. There's a lot of options for sure. Mid-range Freljord will always lose to better stat decks like Lurk and Bard. So you need a busted Omen Hawk. Yeah, probably. But yeah, that's what I wanted to say to you guys. I wanted to sort of like talk about that for a little bit and sort of get that out there and sort of explain how I would approach, evaluating how broken a deck is and how to go about changing it. So let me know what you guys think about it.